Welcome to another story time in ministry. And I remember the very first time God gave me a chance to save somebody. And it was funny because I totally stole that opportunity away from another kid. And this is the story of how that happened. I think a long time ago, like many years ago, I was the director of our church's VBS summer, which is a children's summer day camp. And I remember I was so excited. It was my very first time being a VBS, a day camp counselor, day camp director. And I recruited a whole entire team of staff and volunteers. And I remember spending a couple days before camp training my staff and my volunteers, and I trained them in everything. I trained them in classroom management. I trained them in how to run games and Bible studies. I literally thought I trained them on everything possible. But there was one thing I totally forgot, and that one thing I didn't train them in, that little gap appeared on one of the last days of camp. Usually on the last day of camp, we usually have the kids. We usually share the gospel, right, in a special skit or a special format. And I remember that afternoon, after the gospel was shared, I was heading out to the front of the church to the sign out booth, getting ready for parents to come pick up their kids. And as I was sitting there, I suddenly heard some of my volunteers running and screaming my name. They're like, Sam, Sam, there's an emergency, right? And I'm like, really? Like, what's going on, right? That like a whole group of these, my volunteers were running towards me like at top speed. And they're like, it's Chewy, it's Chewy. And one of our campers, his nickname was Chewy, right? And I'm like, what's going on with Chewy? I thought there was like an allergic reaction, or I thought that he was severely injured, right? And they're like, no, it's an emergency. Sam, you need to come, right? Chewy, you need to go see him. He's crying and everything. And I'm like, oh no, this is gonna be a bad situation, right? On the last day of camp, right before the parents come, I have a camper already crying, right? And so I remember, it was a lot of dread in my heart as I followed the volunteers all the way over to the classrooms. We finally get to the classroom where Chewy was, and I opened the door, and there was Chewy. He was like fully in tears, right? Covered in tears. And I'm like, okay, what's the problem? What's the problem, right? They're like, oh, you know what? One of the volunteers, they shared the gospel with Chewy, and Chewy wanted to give his life to Christ, but the problem is, none of us know what to do next, right? None of us know. Like, we don't know what to pray with him for to accept Jesus as his savior, right? And I was like, oh no, that was the one thing I forgot to train my volunteers in, right? I trained them in literally everything. But the one thing I forgot to train them in was how to actually pray with a kid, a camper who wants to accept Christ into their life. I forgot to train my volunteers in how to lead someone in the sinner's prayer, right? And I was so embarrassed, right? And at the same time, I just said, hey, all my volunteers, it's awesome that you guys are here, right? Props to Kyle, who shared the gospel to Chewy, right? And helped him understand the magnitude of the gospel, right? And I remember just kicking them all out of the room, right? Kept the door open, right? And for child protection policy. but yeah, I remember just sitting across from Chewy, and I asked him, I said, hey, Chewy, do you know, do you understand the gospel? Do you understand about your sin and Jesus Christ as your savior, right? And do you want to give your life to Christ, right? As your Lord and Savior, as your King, the master of your life, and the one who saves you from your sin? I asked him all these questions, and yeah, he had a huge smile on his face, tears in his eyes, because for him, he truly wanted to accept Christ, right? And there and then I led him to copy me through saying the sinner's prayer, right, to accept Christ and as his Lord and Savior. And I remember thinking to myself, oh no, I totally cherry picked this harvest opportunity from one of my volunteers, Kyle, right? Kyle should have been, my volunteer should have been the one who went and led Chewy in this prayer. to accept Christ as a savior. He was the one who ultimately led Chewy to the final steps, right? And it was my fault as the VBS camp director for not training Kyle or my other volunteers. I totally forgot to teach them the sinner's prayer, right? And so now for myself, when it comes to training, right, and teaching my team and my volunteers about how to share the gospel, I always, always, always at the end remind them of what the sinner's prayer is. And I always give them a printout of like, this is the sinner's prayer, right? Take a picture of it, keep it on your phone. And when you lead a person to give their life to Christ, guide them. I get them to do an echo prayer, right? You say the first line of the sinner's prayer and then they say it as well, right? And so that was the first time, at camp, I really led a kid to give their life to Christ and to accept Christ. But I totally cherry picked that from my volunteer. I accidentally stole that opportunity, right? That harvest opportunity. And so that's why today, even today, I'm always so adamant about not just teaching my team, my volunteers, how to share the gospel, but I always make sure I include the sinner's prayer. So yeah, that is my story time in ministry, and it is always so refreshing to remember times when God has saved just another camper, and sometimes He gives us an opportunity to be a part of that story as well. Hope you enjoyed it.